what does gutsy mean to you, my friend?
Ooh, it's just going out and living your life unapologetically.
Welcome to the Gutsy Podcast, the show where you learn how to own what you actually want and shift the mind junk that's been holding you back. I'm Laura Ora, keynote speaker, coach, and your guide to help you get clarity, build confidence, and make the gutsy moves that change your life. Each week, I'm going to help you simplify things by teaching you how to get out of your head while stepping into action. This way you can achieve all those life shifts that you've been overthinking. Your desire, that drives you. But gutsy, that's what gets it done. If you've ever been, or maybe are currently in a financial cycle that you just can't seem to break, despite doing everything right, then you're not alone. It's incredibly frustrating and defeating and often layered with shame, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Today, I'm joined by Tanya Taylor, CPA and MBA, who brings one of the most grounded, empowering takes on money that I've heard in a while. We're talking real, practical guidance for breaking through that financial plateau without all that guilt, perfectionism, and hustle culture BS. So whether you're trying to climb out of debt, build generational wealth, or finally feel in control of your money, then this episode is packed with the mindset shifts and reminders that you need to make that next step. Tanya is an author, TEDx speaker, and the founder of Grow Your Wealth, a platform helping women build financial confidence and retire worry-free. With 24 years on Wall Street and roles spanning accounting and risk at places like Deloitte, Goldman Sachs, and the Federal Reserve, Tanya blends deep industry insight with real-world teaching. Originally from Jamaica, Tanya came to the US at 16, built wealth from the ground up, and now empowers others to do the same, all while traveling the world with 60 plus countries under her belt. Look, I know sometimes financial conversations can get a little jargony and maybe even feel like it's above your head a little bit. At least that's how I feel. This is not one of those conversations. In fact, this is going to be one of those money conversations where you walk away feeling like I'm not the only one and I know what to do next. So grab your pen and paper and let's get into it. Hey, Tanya, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. We're talking about something that I think is so necessary to talk about and so relevant in so many people's lives, and that's breaking financial cycles. You know, we're just taught things in our homes growing up, in the news, in the media. Social media influences us. I mean, there's just a lot to absorb and a lot to unlearn. So I'm excited to dig into that with you today. I'm kind of curious though, you've worked at some pretty substantial places, right? We're not a drop in the bucket here. I'm curious what made you decide to leave the corporate world and go out individually to help women and women in business. What was that transition like? What called you forward?
Oh, it's been a calling for a very long time. It just happened to have come at a moment when, when things are like perfectly lined up, but you don't even realize it. So just to take a step back, I have been doing financial coaching for now about 26 years. It was more informal. And a lot of that came from my background, which I'll share with you a little bit about that. So I came from Jamaica. I was 16. I was undocumented. I was alone. And I came here because we lived in extreme poverty and I wanted something different for my life. So I started learning what that difference would look like and what the wealthy people do and started modeling some of that. And when I looked around me and coming from Jamaica, living in Jamaica, when you spoke to people who returning residents, you would think that America is a land of milk and honey and everybody lives in luxury. Except when I came here, I saw people living paycheck to paycheck, multiple jobs, bad credit, you name it. And as I started learning, one, to break that cycle, I didn't want to be that paycheck to paycheck and I didn't want to have that bad credit. So I started to learn how to do that. And as I was learning that, I thought, well, I could teach people how to do that as well. So I started to, every little thing I learned, I would teach, teach people. And eventually, when I graduated college, I started a stock market investment club, which I ran for about 6.5 years. And I started to take more seriously how I taught people. So I would go to like schools, community organizations, and other places and not just teach about credit and budget, but also start thinking about investing and buying a home, as well as a CPA. By then, I started teaching small business owners as well, just to think about their books and records, how to make sure that those are in place, because you could easily lose your business just by not having your finances in order. And so fast forward, I always said I wanted to leave corporate at 45. I needed to have a stable job, security to raise my family. I didn't leave at 45, but I had a car accident at 48. And right when I had the car accident, I was actually in the process of building my business. And a job offer came knocking, the dream job that I've always wanted to leave corporate with. And once I had the car accident, I actually could not go back to corporate. So I feel like that was redirection. Like, no, you're not going back to corporate. Go on to what you had said you wanted to do, which is to really teach women about managing money and really building financial confidence.
Wow. I mean, I want to say universe, we could have went about this a different way, right?
I
Like maybe
know.
maybe
I
something a little bit easier than a
know.
car accident
Yeah.
because I can't imagine that that was a great experience. But listen, when something's meant for us and we start getting distracted or the carrot's dangling or we start leaning into something, the universe is like, not today.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep.
We said we're going to go left, so we're going left,
Yes.
and I'm going to make that happen.
Yes. Exactly. And everything you said. Yes.
Yes. So you started working specifically with women, women in leadership, women in corporate roles, women in business to just really have that financial education and um, to rebuild their relationship with money.
Yes.
I mean, we got to talk about that first because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's the foundation
Yes.
for everything.
Yes, absolutely. So it's interesting because one of the first things that I do with my clients when I work with them is to do a mindset course. And I remember the first client I had because now the first paid client I had, now I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to build out my business? I'm testing, I'm doing all these things. And I told her we're going to do mindset. And she literally just like, she was like, I just want to learn how to do this. I just want to learn how to do that. And I just asked her to lean into it. And she came into me saying she wants to retire with $60,000. And I am thinking, oh my God, like you really need to shift your mindset, right? Like what can you do with 60,000? I remember saying to her, let's start at 250, right? Because you can't really do much with $60,000. And so she leaned into this whole idea of let me shift my mindset. And I have to tell you, like she talks about it to this day about how that transformed her life because the way that she thought about money completely shifted. She sat down and really started to set goals for herself and just reverse some of the thinking that she had around money. And even just the idea now to her, like, oh my God, I actually thought I could live on $60,000. It's so foreign, like the whole idea. And I feel like if I don't start with that, the whole mindset and shifting how you think about money, when I look at my client pools and the one who really lean into that, they're the ones that have been most successful in really transforming their financial lives.
Hmm. Yeah, if you skip over that, you you stay in a
You
cycle,
do.
don't you?
You do. Yes, a
Don't you?
vicious, vicious cycle.
What are some of those cycles that you see when we either ignore the story or we're just not aware of it or whatever other situation? What are some common cycles that you tend to see within women?
Ooh. So I've had clients who are making 300,000 plus dollars, right? No savings, not even knowing what a high yield savings account is. Very little in retirement, some like literally nothing in retirement, but they have the fancy car, they live the fancy lifestyle, and they have nothing to fall back on. They're literally a paycheck away from becoming unable to pay their bill, from being solvent. They have no emergency fund. So the cycle is you have a job and you're paying your bills. You get a paycheck or pay increase, and instead of taking some of that money and putting it away or, thinking about differently about what I could do with this money, you increase your lifestyle. And so now you're chasing this lifestyle and you are not really building wealth. You're not really building for your children's future. I see, and I have clients of all, background and clients that have made that makes different amount of money. So you may have one making $50,000, you may have one making $300,000. Very similar issues. And sometimes they come in and they're very ashamed. Like even when we're having a call before they join me as a client, they're ashamed to reveal their money issues because they're thinking, I make so much money, but I don't understand why. And people look at me and they think I should do this, this, this. For example, I'll give you an example. I have this nurse who I was talking to recently, and she said, I make this money, I have this. And she laid out everything that she had. And she said, people are looking at me and they're saying, why are you still in an apartment? So now she wants a big house. And we were even having this conversation. And I was saying to her, do you need a big house? Is that what you really need for you? Or is it something that you need because society is telling you that you need that? Because at the same time, she had a lot of debt and she didn't have savings and she had no money in her retirement. So it's really reining in and just really sitting back and looking at where am I and where do I want to be and how do I get there and taking the step to do that instead of staying stuck and being ashamed.
Yeah, that shame that comes up loud and proud in so many different ways. The top downloaded episode of my podcast is my story when I shared my bankruptcy story. And you want to talk about some shame that comes along with it. Like I know this story all too well. And you get pulled into
Yeah.
expectations. And I mean, let's just be honest, spending money feels better than saving it in a lot of cases. Because you kind of get that quick hit, or you get
Yeah.
that dopamine, or you just get used to something being a
Yeah.
certain way.
Yeah.
So how do you work with, like, still living, still doing things, but also still building your wealth
Yeah.
and building your savings?
Yeah. Good question. And so I am a big advocate of balance. And I've traveled to like 62 countries, right? And I have taken my children to about 30 countries. So we've lived. We don't just save, but while doing that, I have set certain goals. And one of the things that I say to my clients when they come in, even when because we believe in budget. I know there are different schools of thoughts about budgeting, but we think about budget in a way that maybe others do as well, but we don't say, "Oh no, don't budget." What I say is, whenever you're creating a budget, there has to be a component of that budget that's my me money. Call it whatever you want. Love me money, my fun money, my whatever money. And you're going, for me, it was my vacation money, right? Whatever I do, and I always say, I don't care what's going on. I have a pool of money and that's going toward my vacation fund because that's what's going to drive me to be able to save, to be able to save for my children for college, to be able to save for retirement. So once I set goals, and when I talk to my clients, that's why goal setting is so important. What is important to you? What is your why? Why are you doing this? Okay, let's go from there. And if your why is, you know what, I want to retire at 65 and I want to have $1 million, $2 million, how do we get there? But I still want to travel now because that's my thing. Then we're going to put that in a pot too. But I want to have this. So for me, it might be travel. For you, it might be, I want to go get my nails and hair done every week. We're going to put that in a pot. Then we're going to start now looking at the things that are, I'm spending on them, but you know what? I don't know if I need to be spending on this, right? This is where we're going to start pulling back. And when we go through that exercise, a lot of times what my clients see is that they're spending on all these different things, but that's not a part of their why. Those are not the things that they value. So once they're able to take those monies and reallocate it, they do have their fund money. They're putting money away for saving for retirement. They're putting money away for saving for their children's college, and they're building an emergency fund. And they have not had a pay raise because now they're prioritizing how each dollar is working for them instead of throwing money all over the place and one, not knowing where it's going, but two, spending on things that you don't really value, you don't really care about. We cut that out.
Yeah, I think the base of that is breaking a cycle of its own, which is looking at your money.
Yes, yes, yes,
Listen, that was one I had to break because
yes,
I grew up in an atmosphere where money was the root of all evil. It left as quickly as it came in. It was always met with resistance and anger, and any conversation around it was like awful and scary. So I grew up thinking, why on earth would I ever look
Right,
at that stuff?
right, right.
That's scary
Yeah,
stuff. So I'm not going to look at it, but you give away so much of your power and your autonomy when you're ignoring it. But
absolutely.
when you go through an exercise like what you just mentioned, is like, it does it take a second to kind of sink into it and like see what you're doing? Sure. You don't have to shame it, but
Right.
it's to have education and awareness of what's even happening, because how are you going to meet your goals or change anything if you have no idea what's going on behind the
Exactly.
scenes?
Yep. Yeah, and those are the things that we talk about. And I like to have honest conversation with my clients because they say it's not going to always happen all at once. And the idea is not to shame yourself, but it's to acknowledge it and just say, "Oh my God, I messed up this time. Okay, now I know that, this I probably shouldn't have spent $500 on a meal to go hang out with my friends, but maybe I should spend 200 to start, 250 to start." So I'm not completely, because when you what's the word that I'm looking for? When you do stuff so drastically, a lot of times it's not sustainable. So
Yeah.
we take our time, we give ourselves a time frame and we slowly. And then there are some things you look at, like one of my clients, she was spending $8,000 a year on Uber Eats. And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this." She literally said, "I'm going to meal prep because I need to do this anyway, because some of this food is not good for me. And when I order food, I'm going to go pick it up." And just like that, she was able to cut off $5,000 and put in her emergency fund, right? And it
Wow.
didn't take anything from, because she just recognized, like, this is insane. This food is not healthy for me anyway. Because I don't look at my money, I never realized how much I was spending. And now that I realize it, I'm just going to fix it. And that was an easy fix for her. So,
Wow. I'm just thinking, I'm like 8,000 a year. I mean, that's a couple of really nice vacations or weekends away. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I
Yep.
mean, I know Uber Eats is pretty convenient,
Yeah.
but so is laying on a beach somewhere.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yep.
How do you recommend looking at your numbers like that? Because I'm not even sure that everyone has a system or a program in place. Like, if you're just sitting here like, I've never really quote unquote looked at my numbers, how do you do that?
So one of the easiest way to do that, actually, because now everything is electronic and we may have like two or three credit cards tied to our phone, which we're always just putting our Apple Pay or doing Uber Eats. It's really easy to just go to our credit card statement. And I usually say to folks, like, if you're really nervous, anxious, like, "Oh my God, take 1 month. Start with 1 month and just look at it, and you will see what you have been spending on for the month." I actually just did this exercise with my daughter yesterday. And then you go to month two. Um, you don't have to do it all at once because you might be overwhelmed. And it might be even a 3 month exercise where you sit down with the first one and you're sitting with these numbers. And as you're going through month two, you're like, okay, well, maybe I spent $500 on Uber Eats last month. This month, you already become conscious, like, "Oh my God, maybe I don't need to spend 500, but maybe you don't." You're just going through each month, you're looking at it, and you start to see pattern emerging. I'm spending too much on Amazon. For my daughter, it was, "I'm spending too much on Enterprise Rent a Car." Because she's in St. Louis and she rents car to go places. But for her, she also said it's cheaper than Uber because she rents it through her school. So, just looking at those patterns and then starting to say, what can I cut back on now? Because these are things that are not really in line. Again, going back to my why and my goals, they're not in line with my goals. So if you just take that approach and you go to your bank account, you do the same thing. You look at your bank statement. If you're looking at your credit card and it's tied to your Uber, you may or may not need to look at your Uber bill, but if you want a quick snapshot, Uber has everything right there. So you can go to your Uber bill. So you're not necessarily looking at it on your credit card from that standpoint, because you're able to see how much you spent on Uber in a snapshot on your phone. And once you start writing those things down, some people use an app. I'm still a spreadsheet kind of girl, so I'm using my spreadsheet. You plug it in, you look at the patterns, and now you start asking yourself these questions. Like my client who said, "Should I be spending $8,000 on Uber Eats when I have no emergency fund?" Or you might say, "Should I be spending $8,000 on Uber Eats when I could be taking a couple of vacations?" Right? And this is where you start mapping it out. And as you map it out and you're pulling money back from each of those categories, that's when you start looking at the things and saying, well, I don't have an emergency fund. So maybe some of this, I take $100 from here and I'm going to put it towards my emergency fund. And I'm going to start building an emergency fund because I know that I need that, or I need a vacation fund, whatever it is. But that's how you start. You start looking at your bank statement, you start looking at your credit card bill, and then you start the process of saying, what am I dialing back on?
Mm. I love how simple that is,
Simple, but
but not easy. I mean, once you, I will say from going through this very exercise myself several times, that first step feels
Ooh,
terrifying.
yes, yes. Just opening
And
it
that,
up is terrifying for a lot of people. Yes,
yeah, because you're like forced to face your decisions.
yes,
I mean, right? There's no
yes,
really way around it. You're
yes,
forced to face your decisions. But I want to reiterate, and we've said this 10 times already, and we'll say it maybe 100 more. It's not about shaming yourself. It's not about saying, how dare you, or what's wrong with you. It's about saying, hey, okay, this is where I'm starting. I need to know what's going on so that I know how to change
yes,
something, so that I can
absolutely.
adjust things. And it's once you get past that, I've always found that it's actually kind of like oh, what do I want to call it? Like an investigation. Like I get kind of weirdly excited about it when I start finding things, or like you find a subscription that you haven't used in four
Yep.
months and you're like, why the heck am I paying,
Yeah,
$12.99 a month? Doesn't seem like a big deal, but you
you
add that
add it
up.
up.
Oh, here, you'll love this one. I recently did this. This is one of those things. I'm like, Laura, why? But it's okay. We just canceled our landline phone.
Wow, you had a landline. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I know. We were living in a little bit of the Stone Age. I kept it, and this is some conditioning that I realized that I still need to work on a little bit. I was I wanted something in case somebody needed to get a hold of me. Such an eldest daughter thing to say. Like if there's an emergency and I want somebody to get a hold of me. So I called because and here's one of the things too, is like it's not always black and white, especially when there's multi things wrapped up, like phone and internet and all that kind of stuff. So I had to call the company to find out what we were actually paying for the phone portion.
Uh-huh.
$90 a month
Whoa.
for a landline,
Wow.
for telemarketers to call
Yeah.
me, and for my doctor to call and remind me of my doctor's appointments.
Wow.
I sat with that for a second. I was like, $90 a month. And then I calculated it over the 10 years that we've lived in our house. I was like, oh my gosh, that is a substantial amount of
Yep.
money on something that's completely useless.
Yep.
Like we have phones.
Yep.
we we can do everything on our cell
Yeah.
phones. So, it's just stuff like that that
Yeah.
even gives you a chance to even periodically, once or twice a year, to go through and just
Absolutely.
reevaluate the numbers. Do you do stuff like that?
Oh, yes, for sure. So I usually tell my clients because we really usually talk about having a budget, but I always say go back like at least every 6 months or even 3 months to start and look back. And then you evaluate and you move forward. Once you've got into a rhythm, then you may not have to, if you're staying on track with your budget, then you don't necessarily have to do it. But sometimes I will even tell clients every week, let's go in to start just to develop that habit, right? This is what you budgeted. This is what you actually spent. And if you have to do it weekly until it becomes monthly, until it becomes every couple months, but at least every couple months, you should be putting what you spent at the actual spent. So you could go back and look back, but then you also do that reevaluation to see, is this still what I should be spending on? Because you may have a subscription this year for something, but you don't need it next year, right? Because whatever it was that you needed it for then, you may not need it now. And vice versa, you may need subscription for something else. So even swapping things out, there are multiple reasons why you want to do that. And I would say starting out, a week sounds like a lot, but for me, that's usually to develop a habit. Then you go to a month, then you go to maybe every 2 months or whatever. But to me, that is so important because once you develop that habit, it becomes like this thing that you just do. I say to my clients, grab a glass of wine or whatever you drink, sit down. and get comfortable with the numbers. And I like when you said it becomes an investigation because it does. Like after a while, you're like, oh my God, I could maybe move this, I could do that, I could do that. And so you're no longer in fear, but you're actually excited about going in and looking to see how you did. And again, if you don't shame yourself, if you're like, okay, I did really well here. I tell my clients all the time, you got to celebrate no matter how small. Oh my God, I did really well here. This yeah, I realize I need to work on. So let's put this as something that I'm going to work on as opposed to, oh my God, I can't, and then fall apart. Because when we start falling apart or we start self-blame, then all the other things will take a hit too. So we always just want to be celebrating what we've accomplished and then looking at the ones that maybe didn't go as well as we wanted it to, and then take a step back and figure out, okay, how do we move this? Or was I realistic when I decided that I wanted to do this? And if I wasn't, then maybe I just need to adjust it. Because if you're saying, I'm going to spend, let's say $100 a month on takeout, but you see consistently you're spending 200, then that was not a realistic budget, right? And we also have to be real about that, or else we're going to be beating ourselves up every single month.
Your relationship with money did not start today, so let's stop blaming today's version of you for it. Inside the Gutsy Collective, we're getting to the root of your financial patterns so you can stop circling the same money cycles and start creating real, lasting change. When you join the Gutsy Collective, you get instant, right now access to the Gutsy Money Reset. This is a deep but very palatable class that's going to help you heal old beliefs and unconscious patterns around your money. Ditch that scarcity and self-doubt that keeps feeding it, and learn how to build a financial foundation that is rooted in power, trust, and expansion. Listen, this isn't just about money, it's about choice. It's about feeling safe, capable, and powerful when it comes to how you spend, save, and receive money. If you're ready to start rewriting your money story, then go to lauraora.com and click on the Gutsy Collective to join today. And if you want a quick link, I put it in the show notes for you too. Yeah. When you're sitting down each week, what does that look like? Or how do you recommend, like what would one do to sit down with your money every week to look at stuff?
So, and we have a toolkit that I have provide the clients. So it's a pretty simple, like they create their budget and then they go in and they just plug in what they've spent. And again, because most things we're using electronic payments, so we're going in and we're just looking for the week, a snapshot of what we've spent on, whether it's from our credit card or whether it's from our bank statement. And some of the things that I also recommend with my clients is like, you don't want to have 50 different credit cards, right? If you have some credit cards and you're like, they give me credit history, they give me all of these things, I don't want to cancel them, maybe use them for one bill. So you know that that's the one bill that you're paying and you kind of have in your head, or maybe you just need to go to it and have a look at it. But you may have one or two main cards that you're using. You have one main operating bank account that you're using, and that's where you're going and you're looking to see what you've spent for the week. You're going to plug it in to your toolkit and then you're going to see what it spits out. You have a snapshot. This toolkit is really good where it gives you a snapshot of what you've spent on, whether it's for the week or for the month or for the past 6 months. So you're able to see it right there.
Okay. And at home, for those that don't have access to the toolkit, maybe yet,
Okay.
how can we how do we set that up at home? Is that a spreadsheet? Is that a
Yeah.
software? Or how do you recommend going about that?
So you can use a spreadsheet. Some people, whenever I'm talking to an audience, the younger people, they hear spreadsheets and they're like, oh
They're
no.
like, get out of
So
here.
yeah, no spreadsheet. I need an app to do this. So, you can use a spreadsheet or you could use an app. And if you're putting things into some apps actually also just pull data from your card. So it's like there. And I don't know the ins and outs of all the different apps, but if you have the app, you can just also go in and just plug whatever you spent on or just pull it in. And then you can start seeing what you've spent on a weekly basis. And then once you see that, you're now saying, is this tracking to what I had budgeted to? So it just depends on how you're comfortable doing it. There are some people who even still use pen and paper because that's what they're comfortable with. And I usually say to people, it's not how you do it, it's what you do to make you feel comfortable that this is what I'm doing and I can see what I'm doing and how it's affecting me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it be simple. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated, because the more complicated it is, and you
The
pair
more you
that
don't
on,
want to do it.
the more you top that on top of something that you're not really wanting to do or you have
Yep.
resistance around anyway, you're going to be like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow.
Yes.
Tomorrow's not coming, friend. Not for that anyway.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
What do you find are some typical, and this kind of goes back maybe to the story a little bit. What are some mindset shifts that you recommend that we need to really focus on, or maybe start working with, to shift into building wealth and to breaking these habits? Because that's essentially what a lot of the stuff is it's habits. We've gotten used to it, or it's what we've always known. So
Yeah.
what are some mind things that we need to focus on finding and shifting?
Interesting, because I sometimes tell my clients, you probably need to go. I had to go to therapy for money. Despite all the things that I have done and been able to accomplish, I still had to go to therapy because I had this mindset of I don't deserve what
Mm.
I've got. And so some of the things that I ask people is when you think about money, what are you thinking? What is your story? What did you grow up hearing about money? Was it shame? Was it guilt? Because that's still in us. And because we're ashamed, we hear that money is the root of all evil. So you said it, why are we going to touch money? We're not going to want money, right? Or we may say, we don't deserve it. For me, that was my story. Like, shoot, I grew up in Jamaica. We were so poor sometimes we didn't know if we were going to have dinner. And here I am, and I look around me, and most people are still struggling. But I have this great job, it's paying me a great income. And so I would take my money and I would just loan it out and not ask back for it or just give it to people and not just give it to people and not recognizing that I worked for this and I'm trying to build wealth so that my children don't have to come up and be struggling. It took me a really long time to get there. So it's starting to ask ourselves the questions. How do we feel when we hear the word money? And how can we shift that to a more positive way to realize that if we have money, there's a lot that we can do with it, right? Than if we don't have the money. And I also think that some of the other things that people do almost subconsciously is that they don't realize or they don't think like, well, I said it before, like I don't deserve the money. So if I don't, what happens when I get it? I just go out and I just spend it. And I don't think about what I'm spending it on. It just goes out. So it's just really shifting your mindset around this is money and it's a tool. And what can I use this tool for that's going to benefit me or benefit society or help me to live a better life? And if we ground ourselves in that, then whatever our story is about money, then we can start working towards shifting that story.
Yeah, so big on the therapy for money. Because that stuff, I mean, our body holds on to those memories and those beliefs, and then we subconsciously, very unintentionally obviously, end up sabotaging the very things that we want.
Yeah.
That spending it as soon as it comes in situation is because we don't feel safe holding it
Yeah.
or seeing it. Like, even though our brains consciously sitting here saying, I want money, I want wealth, I want this, I want that, but our bodies are like, no. Get away, right? So it
Yes.
doesn't matter how
Yes.
much, like you said with your clients, whether they're making 300,000 or 50,000, it's the same problem, just with different amounts of money.
Yep. Same.
you've
Same.
got you've got to build that safety within your body to be able to see it, to believe you're worthy of
Worth
it,
it. Yes.
to be able to hold it and work with it, like. And a lot of that goes back to looking at it.
Agreed. Yes.
My goodness. Oh, so there's also this thing in business, talking about worthiness, is undercharging.
Mm.
I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, also been in this boat myself, where it's just like, I don't feel like I can charge that much. I don't feel like I'm worthy of that much. Ooh, that feels like too much. Nobody's probably going to pay me that. So there's always this like stretch, and retraction.
Yep.
Talk to me about that situation, because that seems to be pretty darn common.
It's common, and especially common among women, because and I've been in that boat. I used to do financial coaching for completely free. So imagine now saying I'm going to charge this. And I think that what one of my coaches did, and I told you I went to therapy about money, just being real. So it was really hard for me to even come to the idea that, okay, I can charge for this because the time that I've put into it is worth it. And there's so much value. The way that my coach often put this to me was, how are you going to transform this person's life? Right? Because you have everything that they need, and they're looking for you to help them to transform their lives. So the investment that they make, don't think of it as a cost. It's an investment that they're making in themselves to be able to make that change. And if you truly believe that you can help that person to transform their lives, and you know you have the skills to do it, then you're doing a disservice if you don't charge them what you're worth. Because everything, every education that you've gathered, every time, every minute that you've put into this to help them to get to that transformation, it's worth it. And it comes back again to worthiness. Am I worthy? Do I think of myself as worthy enough? Do I think of my skills as valuable enough that I can charge somebody to do this? And the person, if they really want that transformation, they're willing to make the investment because they know that they can go. I had a client who went from, she was making about $50,000 a year, and she came into my program and she willingly paid the money. Sometimes we're afraid to ask, but when I told her the price, she had no objections to the price. She came in, and not only did she build an emergency fund, pay off her debt in 7 months, I helped her to reorganize her resume, got a 40% salary increase.
Wow.
And it just kept going. Took a vacation without credit cards, right? So when you think of that kind of transformation, and let's say they're paying 5,000, 10,000, whatever the amount is, think about the value that they've gotten from this and how that value is going to transform over their lifetime. And if we start thinking about it like that, then it becomes much easier to say, this is what I know my service is worth. And so this is the investment that you will have to make. And they will see the value in it too. Because if we don't see the value in it, they're not going to see the value in it, and they're not going to want to pay us. And it's tough. I went through this for a long time, but I got to the place where I felt pretty comfortable that, of course, I have this knowledge, I have the skill set, and I can transform lives because I've seen it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always kind of curious. Obviously a huge fan of charging what you're worth. How do you quantify what you're worth?
that's a good question. I the way I could just speak about the way I did it. I mean,
Please.
I looked at what others were charging as well, because I'm coming into a space which is new, right? And if you're starting a business, you're also looking at competitors, but you're also looking at, okay, where is my skill set relative to others? And also, who am I targeting? Because sometimes you might be targeting certain population where realistically they may not be able to do this, or at least not immediately, right? So it's looking at the different components, who you're targeting, what you're offering, who are your competitors, what are they charging, what makes you different, unique, that someone is going to want to come to you. And what time am I putting into it? What's the skill set that I'm putting into it? And you kind of take all of those things, and that's how you come up with the value. At least that's how I came up with the value that I offered my clients. And even because one of the things I'm doing is going out into corporations now and other spaces, and bring clients in. And even with that, it's going through the process again of, how do I value this? That's always the question. And I've gone out and asked people to assist me in saying, okay, how do I value this? Just to make sure that I know that what I am charging makes sense for me and I'm not undercharging myself.
Yeah. Perceived value is so interesting too, because I love that you mentioned like really knowing who your clients are. Because let's say that you have I don't know, a $20,000 product, but you are targeting brand new business owners. There is a complete mismatch there. I'm
Yes.
not saying that nobody would pay that. I'm just saying that that's going to be a much steeper hill to climb to get someone to sign on because, in the beginning, you're bootstrapping. I
Yep.
mean, you just are.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're targeting business owners that have been in business for 10 plus years and they're doing a million plus a year and you're selling a $500 product, they're going to think it's a waste of time.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Isn't that mind blowing?
Absolutely.
Like it's just perception. So like
Absolutely.
you really got to know like who you are, what you offer, who it's for,
Yeah.
and generally what's happening in that market,
Yep.
and then set and obviously know your own goals and then set your pricing based off of that stuff because
Absolutely.
I just have always found that mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to look at different components. You cannot just go out there. And that's why it's important to do your pre-work so that you can know what you're charging. You can even know who you want to target. When I started out, I was just targeting anyone, and that you're just kind of throwing stuff out there. And then I started targeting women. But one of the interesting things that started happening is I got a lot of nurses. And so even though right now I say my focus is on healthcare professionals, I still get clients from all over. But the reason why I kind of niched down was you now are able to better price and articulate, and then others are going to say, oh wow, she's offering something good, so let me go join her too, even though I'm not in the healthcare industry. So that's also something else to consider as well when you are coming up with your pricing. Just be very, very deliberate about who. They always say you need to have an avatar. Who is that person that you're targeting? And will they be willing to pay that? And you also have to know that whatever it is that you're charging, that it's going to, because you're running a business, you got to be able to live, you got to be able to build wealth. So you got to make sure that it works for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're aligned with the right clients, that self-worth piece starts to get easier.
Yes.
Like I can remember when I finally like got my shit together and I realized that like, hey, this cycle that is continuing of feast or famine, all or nothing, everything's going great, everything's terrible. That's based off of my fluctuation of my own self-worth, of me going all in and then hiding.
Yep. Yep.
That's a
We
hard
tend
pill
to do that a lot.
a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But once I finally clicked in with that and realized, like, oh, Laura, like all of this is based off of the ebbs and flows of your own self worth. And I started talking the way I wanted to talk, charging what I know that I'm worth, aligning with the right clientele. And like that sale was just easy.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get it now. Right. Because now I'm in alignment with myself.
Yep.
The right client sees the value in it. It's a no brainer for them. Everything just starts flowing differently. I mean, the birds are singing. It's just a great day.
Yep. Yeah.
Tanya, you have such a great down to earth way of talking about money, which I think is honestly what we need. I think that for far too long it's been a very male dominated industry that a white male dominated industry if I go even further there. So just having your approach, having your perspective, that down to earthness, it's breaking a cycle in its own. So
Thank
I
you.
absolutely, I want to make sure everyone knows where they can find you, connect with you, maybe even start working with you with their money. Tell us where to find you.
Sure. So you can go to my website at Grow Your Wealth 10x, number 10x.com. And that's where you can basically find my socials from there. I'm on Instagram at Grow Your Wealth 10x as well. But if you go to my website, you'll find me there. I'm on Facebook. I actually have a Facebook community that I post in just to educate people. Same thing on Instagram. And I'm on TikTok too. So that's where you can find me. I also have two books that I've written, and one of them I just want to spend 1 minute to talk really quickly about it. So I wrote a book, Broke to Wealth, and it's really just the foundations of building wealth. But I think this one I want to talk about because a lot of people miss out. I did a TEDx talk, and the TEDx talk is called Dreams to Disability: How to Protect Yourself from Life's Unexpected. And I became disabled. I think I mentioned it at the top of the call of the podcast. And I was in corporate. Once you become disabled, a lot of times people don't realize you only get 60% of your salary. And
Mm.
how do you fill that gap of 40%? So that's something that people don't realize, that they need to get a long-term disability protection to protect themselves for that 40%. And if you're unemployed, you also need to get long-term disability insurance, because you may have insurance for your business, especially if you're a brick and mortar, to cover your rent and all of that. But a lot of times we're not thinking about what happens if I become disabled? How am I going to support my family? And so I ended up writing this book to accompany my TED Talk, and it's called Limitations to Limitless. And I really talked about how to protect your finances from life, from life curveballs, because I realized how easy I could have lost everything that I worked for once I became disabled. And I think the statistics is 1 in 4. I'm getting a brain fog now, but it's pretty high. What percentage of individuals become disabled over the age of once you hit 20?
Oh,
And
wow.
1 in 4 people filed, 44% of people who filed for bankruptcy actually do so because of some kind of medical issues. So
Mm.
with all of that, I really feel like it's important that people understand, at least go watch the TED Talk. Then you could go and pick up this book if it makes sense for you, but watch a TED Talk to get some really good nuggets of how you can protect yourself.
Amazing. We'll make sure that we link both your TED Talk and both of your books in the show notes so everyone can quickly and easily access those. Tanya, I got to know, what does gutsy mean to you, my friend?
Ooh, it's just going out and living your life unapologetically.
I loved the grounded, practical approach around money in this conversation. Look, I have done so much work around money and trauma and shame and all the things that I was taught when I was younger about what money is and what money makes me. And unlearning those things and forming my own habits and beliefs has been literally a lifelong journey. But you know where we got to start? Is with open conversations like this. Knowledge is power. Information is power. Sometimes all we got to do is be willing to look at it, to own what it is in this moment, and to not make it mean something about ourselves. When you release that attachment, you can truly start to move forward to have the financial freedom that you know deep down that you are capable of. Be sure to connect with Tanya below. And remember, that class inside the Gutsy Collective of rewriting your money story, really learning how to separate from the past so you can move forward, is instantly available. Also linked in the show notes. My friend, I love you. I see you. You absolutely can and will do this. Okay? Hey, come say hello to me. I'm on all the platforms. You can find me using @thatlauraora. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.